One of the purposes of a cast-on is usually to stop rolling at the edge, the lower edge if you're casting on. Ribbing stops the roll because knit and purl stitches, or main bed and ribber stitches, face opposite directions, so by going to and fro, they stop the curl. Doubled stockinette hems, also known as hung hems, and this one is such a hem, but also with the Fair Isle option, actually stop rolling in the same manner, because by knitting 2 layers, one layer is facing one direction, one facing the other, and they cancel the curl out for each other. The tripled crochet cast on cancels the curl simply by virtue of the extra weight of yarn. It's especially good for baby garments and for the wrists of adult garments. Here I just knitted a sleeve and put it on an imaginary sweater so you could see how it would fit. The sleeve you see here could replace this sleeve on the basic drop-shouldered crew neck sweater, in a baby size, of course, because that's what I knitted. Let's do the knitting. Because of using 3 strands of yarn together, you need a bigger hook than usual. So if you're working on a standard gauge, try a mid-gauge or bulky latch tool. Since I'm working on a mid-gauge, I just went for the rug hook, which is even bigger than a bulky latch tool, although a bulky would have done. I've brought the needles forward, and I am simply crocheting a little bit loosely, making chain stitches around the needle shanks. There's nothing different about this than the ordinary crochet or latch tool cast on. The only difference is I'm using so much yarn. Because of this, many times the carriage would be under stress if you asked it to knit these stitches off. So there's an easy fix for that. We just thread the yarn through the carriage and then pull it to the opposite side and begin manually stitching a first row. Noticed I doubled it up around the end needle and then knitted a couple of stitches or 3 using 2 strands, well, both ends of the yarn. That means that I can just snip off the yarn tail. It's already woven in when I get done. And you might imagine that it's difficult to get your stitches even, but it is not. If you're really worried, you can put a spacer behind there, but you can actually feel with your fingertips and even up those stitches with one another, and you can see whether they're even or not. So it's something you can learn to do in a few tries, and I've been doing it for donkey's years now, and I would really rather use this than the spacer. I'm satisfied with the results. After this, normally my machines all knit fine. I do hang some weights to help get that thick spot that we created by chaining on out of the way, and I do have the needles knit back the first row that the carriage knits from hold, because whenever you do that, by pushing those needles forward, you've done half of the work the carriage normally does. So now I'm just going to knit this short sleeve. This is the sleeve that you saw earlier in the video on the pretend sweater. And bind it off when we get to the top, and shortly we can have a look. When it comes off of the machine, it needs to have the cast on tugged lengthwise to set it at the bottom of the knitted stitches. It may still roll a little, but after a little bit of steaming and having the edges seam together, it will normally be just fine. This is one of the techniques from the Answer Ladies Machine Knitting Notebook, which is mostly about knitting patterns, but I wanted to include a lot of ways to start and finish because it's aimed at teaching beginners the whole knitting process. This has existed in the past in a bulky and standard version, but it is so different than it was that it is now really a new book, so I'm calling it the Answer Ladies New Standard and Bulky Notebook. And the existence of a mid-gauge book, which has 2 mid-gauge gauges that are very common, is a brand new event, so I'm excited to offer it to you. There is a link to the sales page in the program notes in case this is something that would help your knitting. This video is part of a series designed to help knitters learn to get comfortable with using the Answer Ladies Machine Knitting Notebook. The series includes a lot of useful techniques. Many of them may be used on patterns you already have and enjoy, so I hope you'll look for the rest of the series.